Welcome back, friends, to another, shall we say, meat lovers' paradise known as Brexit. Why We Won by Andrew Maher. And oh boy, grab your loved ones, people, because you may want to hold them close, for the stupidity may indeed cause you to shake yourself off your chair. So, this chapter is called The Remainers' Reaction, and I will try and keep up my my voice for the reading. I'll try, see how far I can keep it going. I didn't give much thought to the Remain's possible reaction if they lost. Just as the Remain complained that Leave had no strategy in place if they won. Both sides were, at the close of voting, apparently convinced that despite Leave's best efforts, Remain would win. Their reaction, as we experienced the euphoria of an unexpected victory, was bitter and telling. You should never have decided that. You're stupid. We'll ignore you for your own good. We need a second referendum. Let's have a legal challenge. The MPs at least will shoot down this absurdity. So much for free will and respect for the people of this nation. If it was Remainers' reaction above all that centred on an opinion that had formed as I looked on at other matters of policy in this country. We live, as do other nations in the West, not in a democracy, but... So, I'll start again. We live, as do other nations in the West, not in a democracy, but in a democratically elected autocracy. That doesn't make any sense. And here's the thing. Let's say, Remain had won and it had been the other way around. Do you think Leave's reaction would have been any different? No. we know that now. But there you go. Anyway, mercifully, a quick chapter, that one. Democracy. A democratically elected autocracy. So this is what he means by this. So, let's find out more about apparently why we live in a democratically elected autocracy. While it may seem that the immigration was the only issue, and while Remain planted it as possible as a racist issue, it was a symptom of a far deeper issue. We in the West, having inherited the Roman model of government, a hierarchical authority, for all the novelty of the US model, as they see it, the distinction is more a matter of marketing than fact. Does anyone want to tell this guy we live in a constitutional democracy that operates a first-past-the-post system? And of course, he randomly loves the US because this guy is a hard libertarian. The US still has a supreme figure, president's nominated governor of a province of Rome, and this is a Senate. And this has its circuses, its games, in a Colosseum or Super Bowl. Interesting, the two teams are essentially synonyms of the Colosseum, being a colossal amphitheatre or Super Bowl. Right? After we are constantly told that in a democracy we are free people after all, we have elections. Rome had elections too. Yeah, but only certain people in Rome could participate in those elections. And as a Roman citizen, very much like an American citizen, was a superior simply because he was a Roman. The Roman history looks a lot like America today, or Britain in a period of empire. Nations which consider themselves superior because they had achieved military and economic superiority over their rivals. Okay. a lot of those rivals didn't have the same guns, or shall we say machine guns, shall we say, to conquer those military rivals, shall we say. So why is it relevant to us voters as citizens? Contrast that top-down authority, which was overwhelmingly Remain, with the experience of the people. The principal responsibility of governments is these nations is and was to keep the people quiet. So apparently that's why you've got to keep the people quiet. Yeah, that's yeah. So no protests, anyone. So no protests have ever happened in the UK at all. That massive Iraq war protest, the People's Vote protest that happened, never happened. It was all about keeping the people quiet. It had its agenda, and if you were one of the great and the good, it was your agenda. If you weren't, your job was to eat, sleep and pay your taxes, or otherwise be compliant and supportive. The shock of Remain at the victory, at the vote result can simply be explained as the shock of seeing people disobeying those who feel entitled to run our lives. It is the presumption of their legitimate God-given. Hardly. So you're saying that apparently the government had too much reach into people's lives and was telling them how to run it. Will he tell us more? I hope so. So this chapter is called Human Dignity and Free Will. We are born with a natural human dignity. It is present because of what we are. Depending on your philosophy, it might be a biological individual, a child of God, or an insodial being. Regardless of your personal choice of philosophy, how many of us feel that we are born to serve others? None, I suspect, but there is a simple premise of which does need to be all codified, because it is indeed self-evident above all that we have free will. Yeah, and even though governments still create laws, people still go out and break these laws. You know, but never mind. Anyway, I can't keep up that voice any longer. It's destroying my vocal cords straight away. Whatever you care to do in this precise moment is entirely your choice. People may react to it, but you can't be prevented from making that choice. But there are consequences for that choice. At the root of the vote, there is the question that applies to our relationship to our own government as much as it applies to EU. We are born to serve another. The vote said no, and rightly so. No one was saying that. No, our government, and not even the EU government, says that you should serve us. That's not, you know, MPs aren't suddenly lifted to this, you know. Well, since he likes to refer to Camelot a lot, this lord-like state over the peasants where they can just command the peasants to do what they want. That's not the case. That just does not happen. Yeah, but this is actually quite a good example of how the Brexiteers feel about the EU. It's not how it operates at all. There is an election process. We are literally going into one next week. And it's, you know, you have to vote for people that represent your ideals and values. And, you know, this is the problem I think we've had in a lot of our politics in general. It's really been political apathy that has sunk in. And because of this apathy, people haven't been interested in voting for their MPs, but that's another discussion. I can feel myself going into a rant. Anyway, back into the next chapter called No more agendas. And we'll leave it at that after this, because I've only done 2 and I've already had enough. So, everyone who wanted us to stay in had an agenda. How about all the people who wanted us to leave? They definitely had an agenda, as it has been proven over time. Whether it was simple as their wallet or the liberal agenda of culture in this multicultural Britain, what they were packing, that they were packing fit to burst, or the Eurocrats with their one superstate agenda. So the idea that Britain is somehow full is not true. Again, if you don't believe me, go and look at the 5 impacts of immigration that Theresa May did while she was the Home Secretary. Everyone had an agenda, including, in a sense, Leave, those old white thickos. We were tired of other people's agendas. Or, more likely, the people who led Leave were tired of having to follow the regulations and wanted to make more money. You don't need an agenda to live a good life. Telling us how to run our lives, both in our own governments and in the superstate, unelected authority of the EU, conflict with that. The EU aren't telling you how to run your life at all. That's ridiculous. When the people voted against the EU, not Europe, but the EU political system installed on top of the European sovereign governments, the EU system, as you call it, all these governments agreed to be a part of that. It wasn't installed upon them or forced upon them. They all agreed to that because they know to run things like the common market and the single market and the customs union, you need to have rules. So there has to be bodies which oversee those rules. And there has to be another body which decides how those rules are made and how they are implemented. You know, it's surprising this guy, well, I don't know, he might do later in the book, seems to, does he like the fact that the WTO has a court with judges and they decide rules and laws? Our government does technically make laws, though which are, you know, enforced by the government and laws. So does this guy hate our own government? Is this guy actually an anarchist and not a libertarian? Who knows? Yeah, they registered a vote that said they would no longer trust the EU to be acting in our best interest. To me, that is a remarkable rational position. The EU had been acting in our interests. We were part of a club of 27 other member states. We had a lot of influence in the EU, and a lot of people that when, you know, if Brexit happens and, you know, we lose all this stuff, a lot of people are going to be realising, oh, wait a minute, why did we lose this? What happened about this? I never thought we'd lose this. You know, one of the things that has been brought up time and time again is that a lot of people, especially on the Leave side, the people who campaign for Leave, the leaders, are now saying, oh, we can do WTO, that'll be fine, we can leave without a deal. But before, they were saying, oh, it'll be fine, we can do a deal, and we can remain in this customs market, we can remain in the you know, single market. You're like, that's, you know, you can't at all. But, you know, and a lot of people were conned by that. And I've said before, if you took everyone who voted to leave and you said, you presented them the options, do you want this no deal, or do you want to remain in the customs union single market, that option would win. Because a lot of people do recognise the value of being in the customs union and the single market. The problem is that a lot of people who lead the Leave campaign and, you know, top level Brexiteers all hate regulations. That is why they wanted to leave, and they didn't like the fact that, for example, the EU had been talking a lot about cracking down on anti-tax avoidance, because to really tackle big companies like Amazon and Google avoiding tax, you have to have a big organisation that is able to tackle them. And one of the biggest organisations in the world currently to be able to tackle that amount of anti-tax avoidance is the EU. And as the Panama Papers pointed out, which I don't know if he mentions these, but we'll be interested. I think those came out after. I can't remember now. Yeah, a lot of the anti-tax avoidance companies use British territories. That's why David Cameron tried to exclude foreign British territories like the Cayman Islands, where a lot of, shall we say, shady money is passed around to basically be, avoid paying tax, to be excluded from that. The EU said no. And what happened, this is that you can actually chart the course from that to Brexit. There's a very interesting timeline if you go and look at it. But yeah, that's another 2 chapters. This is going to be really hard going through. It really is. But there you go. And as I said in the first video of this is really, it's fossilized gammon. It is pure, it's an absolute time capsule. And none of what this guy, is saying has held up very well in the past 2 years. So there you go. That's another GammonVision.